All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I've been creating a series of videos based on the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series, and we are in the CSS component, and we're talking about CSS layout, and it's time for Flexbox. Now, as we get started, two things. The first, to review, I would strongly recommend you go out to flexbox.io and sign up and watch the free 20 video course that is created from Wes Bose. All right, as it says, the first 13 are aimed at understanding the fundamentals of Flexbox. We take a deep dive into understanding rows, columns, axes, wrapping, alignment, centering, and layout. The last 7 are code-alongs, where you build everything from a navigation to a mobile app layout entirely with Flexbox. It's pretty darn nice. Now, you say, well, I don't want to do that, or I've been doing it, but it's not very fun. There's another thing that's called Flexbox Froggy. All right, and with Flexbox Froggy, as it says, it's a game for learning Flexbox. So they ask you to type stuff in here. And what ends up doing is you move the frog towards the lily pad, etc. So they tell you the kind of stuff that you're supposed to put in here. It says, for example, putting in this should move the frog to the right. Notice it did. All right. And you go through there. I'm not going to go and put all this stuff in there, but you get the idea, hopefully. And we have always in the past made students go through this. It's several levels. And when you get through, go through it again and finish, you get this little, like a little badge, online badge that says that you've completed it. Nothing wrong with that. But again, I would strongly suggest you go through the What the Flexbox. All right, let's jump into this. So, as previously mentioned, Flexbox is a 1D or one-dimensional layout for laying out items in rows or columns. Rows, if you're laying it out horizontally, columns, if you're laying it out vertically. Items flex to fill the additional space and shrink to fit into smaller spaces. All right, so why Flexbox? As the author says, for a long time, everything was done with floats and positioning. And I will tell you, talking to people that I know who are in this business, they hated using floats and having to work with different positionings all the time. It says the following simple layout requirements are either difficult or impossible to do without something like Flexbox. Vertically centering a block of content inside of its parent, making all the children of a container take up an equal amount of the available width and height, regardless of how much is available, making all columns adopt the same height even if they contain different content. As you'll see in the next section, Flexbox makes this a lot easier. All right, so it says in this article, you're going to get to work through a series of exercises to help you understand how Flexbox works. To get started, you should make a copy of the starter file, which is flexbox0.html. Well, there it is. I just am going to keep throwing mine as I have been inside of this download file. So there's that. All right, and again, I'm going to just throw it into my download file. There it is. Now, I'm not doing anything right now as far as prettying it or whatever. Right now, there is some CSS in here, as you can see. I've saved it. So let's just see what indeed it looks like. All right, so that's it right there. Notice we've got 3 articles and a header up above. Okay. Says you can also see it live here. So you can click there and it is what I just copied and put in. All right. So it says you'll see that we have a header element with a top level heading inside of it, a section element with 3 articles. It says we're going to use these to create a fairly standard 3-column layout. So we've got this, we would like this. All right. So again, they mentioned it already, but just so you understand this, we have what? This is a section. The section begins here and it ends here. Each section contains an article. There's the first article, there's the second article, there's the third article. All right, you'll notice the first article just has one long sentence in it, or whatever. Maybe it's not one long sentence. I don't know, I guess it's not. The second one has got a little bit more text in it, I believe. And I know the third one does. Maybe the second one doesn't. All right, or maybe they just broke it up. It really and truly does not matter. But we want to tell the sections to display flex. So that's what we're going to do. Just making that one change in our CSS. All right, so section display flex. That's it. And what you can see is what looked like this now looks like this. And I guess these first two are the same, and the third one has got more stuff in it. But you'll notice that one thing that it did, first of all, it apportioned it, so each one is taking up a third, okay? And secondly, it made the height of each one the same, okay? So as mentioned, this causes the section element to become a flex container and its children to become flex items. It did this. So as mentioned right here, this single declaration gives us what we need. We have a multiple column layout with equal size columns, so they're the same width and they're the same height. This is because the default value given to flex items, again, the flex items are those children, are set up to solve situations like this. So the author says, let's be clear and reiterate what's happening here. The element we've given the flex, the display flex to, is acting like a block level element in terms of how it interacts with the rest of the page. But its children are being laid out as flex items. Now the next section is going to talk about what this means. But again, if you're just hearing this for the first time, it may not make a boatload of sense, and that's okay. All right, let's just jump into the flex model here. All right, I'm at 7 minutes, so I'm doing fine for time. All right, it says when elements are laid out as flex items, they're laid out along two axes. Notice there's a main axis, all right, which goes across horizontally, and a cross axis, which goes vertically. This is the default. So the main axis, it says, is the axis running in the direction that the flexes are being laid out in, and as rows across the page or as columns. So in other words, if you were to change this so that instead of having 3 columns, we had it set up in a row, 3 columns, if we wanted to set it up differently, the cross axis might come over here and the main axis might be over here, is what they're saying. So the cross axis is the axis that runs perpendicular to the direction that the items are being laid out in. Whereas there's a start and an end for the main axis called main start and main end. There's a start and an end for the cross axis, which is called cross start and cross end. All right, the parent element is the flex container, and the items that are being laid out are called flex items. So again, in our example, the section is the flex container. Each article is a flex child or a flex item. It says, bear this terminology in mind when you go through subsequent sections. All right. Flexbox provides a thing with direction that specifies the direction that this is going to run in. It says, try adding this flex direction column. Try adding that to the CSS. So right there. Just that. And let's see if it changes anything. Now it looks the way it did by default. So what if we want it back again? Well, if we change that column to the word row, not rokes, the word row, save it, and refresh. Look familiar? All right. So it says you'll see this puts the items back in their original columnar layout. All right. You can also lay these out in the reverse direction with row reverse and column reverse. It says experiment with these. Because I'm not in any kind of hurry to get through this, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you examples of each. So I'm going to use the row reverse and the column reverse. Okay, so does this now say 3 to third, second, first? It does. Okay, we can also lay these out, and instead of saying row reverse, we can say column reverse. And that should go back to the way it was looking before, except the first one should be third, the second one second, and the third one first. There you go. Now, the thing to realize is we changed the way that they are being laid out in their Flex container. We did not change the way that they were actually set up in their normal flow. Okay? All right. Wrapping. One issue that arises, as it says, is if you've got a fixed amount of width or height is in your layout, is eventually your children will overflow the container, breaking the layout. It says have a look at our FlexWrap 0.html example or view it live. Okay, so there it is. That does not look very good, but let's grab this one. And as we have been doing, 134 lines. We're going to put it in to here. All right. All right, so as we work our way in here then, I have saved. Okay. Now say what you want to say about this, but the good news is we've got what, 12 articles in here. Basically, I think it's the same one. Most of it is. So it's just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, etc. But does it look good? No, it doesn't look good. But that said, everything is inside of its box. Nothing is jumping outside of its box. All right. So it says here we see the children are indeed breaking out of their container. One way that you can fix this is by putting this in your section rule. So we're telling it here to wrap. Okay. Now we're going to do this in 2 different steps. So we're going to put this into our section rule. Okay. Now when we put that in, it should look different. All right. We've got that row in there again. Let's just remove the direction. In fact, I think we want it to be columnar, so I will put in there column. I will remove that, just put in column. Okay, and let's see what it looks like now. We've saved it. So with the wrap in there, let's see if it looks any different if we put it in as row. All right, it looks like it's being overridden because we've got the wrap in there. So you can see what it looks like. So let's come back in here and add this. All right, add this rule, flex 200 pixels. All right, I'm not sure why, because the columnar doesn't appear to be working on here. So let's look. I'm going to remove this direction, period. right. And I think they said to put this into article here. So let's look at that. Okay. Well, that looks nicer. Each one of these is now 200 pixels wide, and it looks like we've got room for 3 of them. All right. That looks pretty nice. Since we now have multiple rows, as many Flexbox children are fitted into each row as makes sense. The 200 declaration means that each will be at least 200 pixels wide. Rather, it says we'll discuss this more later on. You might also notice that the last few children on the last row are made wider to see that the entire rows are going to be filled. It says, but there's more we can do here. It says, try changing your flex direction property to row reverse. We've actually already done that, so I'm not going to run through that again. All right. So where are we time-wise? All right, I'm at 16 minutes. I'm going to pick it up with the FlexFlow shorthand in just a couple moments.